Welcome back. Before the start of the thematic session on the topic, the role of research universities in innovation economic growth, we are pleased to have Professor Xun WU, Associate Director, Top Postgraduate Studies at the Interdisciplinary Programs Office, the chair and moderator of today's session, to give us a brief introduction for today's thematic session. Professor Xun WU, please.
Well, thank you very much for coming to this session. And I'd like to also thank all the speakers who will share their experiences and also their insights about the topics of a role of a research university in the innovation-led economic growth. As we all know, universities play a very important role in education and also research. Right? These are the two big components of research university. But more recently, there are also high expectation on the role of universities in innovation and the technology development. Right? In the areas where we are, the Greater Bay Area, there's a significant development in this area, and also very high expectation for the research university to play more proactive role in these areas. Yeah. So today we are very lucky to be able to invite 5 speakers from leading university, both in the region as well as beyond the region. Right? We have a professor from KU Leuven, and also we have a professor from University of Tokyo and Nanyang Technology University, and also, of course, including our own university, HKUST, as well as Lingnan University. So we'll hear from these speakers about their experiences in leading technology innovation development in respective university, and share with us their insights about both in terms of what happened in the past, as well as what our future looks like in this area. So I would turn back to NC for introduction of our speaker today, and then we'll get our presentation going.
Thank you, Professor WU.
Without further ado, let's welcome Professor Koenraad, Executive Director at Leuven Research and Development, KU Leuven, to give a keynote lecture on KU Leuven R&D, creating and mobilizing a KT ecosystem. Professor DEBACKERE, please.
Good morning or good evening, everyone, because the time zone differences are to be taken into account here. So I'm very glad and happy that I am able to present some of the insights that we have gained at KU Leuven Research and Development, where since 72, so 1972, almost 50 years, we have gained experience with technology transfer / knowledge transfer, and not just from an academic perspective, but also from the perspective of building and mobilizing a knowledge transfer ecosystem around our university. And so going to the next slide, this means that the first item that I would like to bring today is the critical success factors in understanding well-functioning ecosystems. Because it's obvious that ecosystems are redrawing boundaries of competition. And as you can see on the next slide, redrawing boundaries of competition means that where in the 19th century, a lot of innovation activity was based on entrepreneurial activity. And you see the picture of Thomas Alva Edison as an eponymous innovator, entrepreneur, inventor. And then, of course, in the 20th century, this model of innovation, entrepreneurial-driven innovation, was moving into the world of corporate innovation. We see the rise of the large, huge corporate R&D center, a number of iconic corporate R&D centers are Bell Laboratories in the United States, but in Europe also, for instance, the physics labs, Natuurkundig Laboratorium, as we called it in Dutch, at Philips. But today, in 21st century, we know that knowledge creation, knowledge diffusion, and innovation have become much more distributed. So it is still a combination of entrepreneurial and corporate activity, but it's also a networked activity. And this means that innovism, which means productivity, growth, and development through innovation, has become increasingly dependent on ecosystems. And ecosystems imply networks of complementary actors. And the next slide tries to give an overview as to what the major ingredients of an ecosystem are all about. So when we talk ecosystems, we talk, of course, of infrastructure, and we talk of knowledge institutions, academic institutions, public research centers that are there to generate new insight, new fundamental science, new fundamental knowledge, that also have access to the equipment to do so. But of course, this is necessary but not sufficient. You have to hook up to the business environment, meaning startup companies and incumbent companies. So proximity is also an important dimension in this respect, because you need frequent interactions between that business environment and the knowledge infrastructure in a region. Those are two necessary conditions, but in and of themselves, they're not sufficient to build a thriving ecosystem. You also need talent, human capital, and that's of course where the academic world plays an important role, but also the startup world plays an important role, because startups are ideal training grounds for innovative professionals to gain experience in managing a startup and scaling up a startup company, and that's a talent development in and of itself. So human capital is a third essential ingredient in any ecosystem. And of course, if you want to start, scale, grow, you need access to financial capital. So an ecosystem should not only be a talent-based ecosystem, an institution-based ecosystem, but also a finance-based ecosystem. We need the financial resources to transfer knowledge from the lab to the company, to the startup or spin-off company. And of course, it is also relevant to have at least some local demand present. Local, of course, doesn't mean within the city or region where the ecosystem is developing, but for instance, in our case at KU Leuven, local demand means European level demand for know-how, knowledge, innovation that is being developed in our ecosystem. So those five major building blocks, infrastructure, financial capital, business environment, human capital, and local demand, make up the essential ingredients of any ecosystem that can thrive and that can develop. And that is what we have experienced in the Leuven area over the last 50 years, but the ecosystem development has really taken place over the last 20-25 years. And the next slide then tries to highlight the fact that such an ecosystem means that we have what I call entrepreneurship in action. Entrepreneurship both at the level of the scientific world as well as at the level of the business world. And today we talk not any longer of the triple helix in this respect, the triple helix, which was a concept developed by Henriette Kowitz and Lud Leidersdorf in 2000, and which integrated government action, academic action, and business action into one whole and one complete setup in order to bring knowledge to innovation. But this has become translated into what we call today a multiple helix. And on the next slide, I want to give some of the ingredients of such a multiple helix. The triple helix meant that we were integrating academic, public sector, government, and business action. Then came about the quadruple helix, which for instance is extremely relevant in health innovation because it implies the involvement of, for instance, patient organizations in innovation trajectories. The multiple helix means that we also include not just societal actors, but also financial actors, and that the intersection of knowledge transfer moves from just the 3 triple helix actors into multiple helix actors, including patient organizations, civil society organizations, NGOs, think of climate change, but also financial organizations. And in that triple, quadruple, multiple helix in action, an important objective is to de-risk the trajectory from lab to market. It's complementing the activities of the different actors. It's differentiating the activities of the different actors. Universities and businesses are complementary in this respect. Patient organizations are complementary. And of course, it's about sharing relevant know-how, relevant knowledge, relevant insights. And the 3 main elements that drive such a multiple helix in action are entrepreneurship and business development, of course, but also the foundation of sound management of intellectual property, because the foundation on which we transfer knowledge from lab to business and market is built on intellectual property. And this also means that we have to manage that intellectual property in a sound way. And of course, collaboration between different institutional actors is a must. Contract research, for instance, is one example, but creating a startup or a scale-up is another example. And I come to that later on in this presentation. So this as building blocks for the helix, triple, quadruple, or multiple helix in action. And this brings me to the next slide, where essentially this shows what the reason is for doing it. This shows some impact that we have been able to generate through Leuven Research and Development, impact from science to customer, to patient, to market. And I will just pick 2 out of the multiple pictures on this slide. First, you see the suitcase. The suitcase is the ultralight suitcase that was brought to market about 15 years ago by Samsonite. You have to understand that at that point in time, Samsonite was really eager to innovate and to rejuvenate its business, given the maturity of existing briefcases, suitcases, etc. they brought to market. This ultralight suitcase was based on a co-development with the university. It was made of composite materials. This was a breakthrough at that point in time, and we were involved as an academic institution in almost the whole value chain of creating that suitcase, starting with intellectual property and knowledge management and patenting activity together with the company. But we went as far as helping them to select suppliers that might be living up to quality expectations required for the raw materials for such a suitcase. And the other example I want to give is the drug development, the Viriat drug that you see on the picture on the slide. And this is an example where we created together with colleagues, so collaboration together with colleagues of the Institute of Organic Chemistry in Prague, where we created a new set of molecules, invented a new set of molecules that became a world-leading drug to treat HIV, and that is today part of the portfolio of an American company, Gilead Sciences. So it's all about impact. We know that our scientists want to generate impact through their research via publications, but Leuven Research and Development wants to augment that impact by translating it to societal, to covering societal needs, to introducing new businesses and creating new market positions. So having said this, let us move on to the next slide, because this means that in order to do such an impact creation, you need a proper environment. And we have been working hard already 30 years now to create an ecosystem within the Leuven area. And this has led to various awards. One of those awards is that in 2020, Leuven was selected European Capital of Innovation by the European Commission because of the unique multiple helix links that have been created in the environment of Leuven, together with the university, together with the Microelectronics Institute, IMEC, but also together with the financial world and many supportive activities, like, for instance, IP consultants, like, for instance, consultants that help our startups to internationalize, etc., etc. This brings me to the next slide, because when you want to do this, you need, of course, access to funding, access to financial resources, and financing means. And this is what we did already in 1997 when we created a seed capital fund with two major banking partners, KBC Bank and BNP Paribas Fortis, where we set up a seed fund that helps us to create new startups, new spin-off companies. And of course, being a comprehensive university, we did not restrict the functioning of this fund to a particular technology domain. We want to be broadly defined and diffused across the different scientific disciplines within KU Leuven. And so you see some statistics. We have been, through Gamma Frisius, we have been providing seed capital to about 65 high-tech spin-off companies in the meantime, and we have invested about 42 million euros in starting up. Of course, this is Gamma Frisius. Going to the next slide, please. But we have done more than just Gamma Frisius. We have created an ecosystem with strategic research institutes like IMEC, like the Flemish Institute for Biotechnology, VIB, Flanders Make, the strategic research center for the manufacturing industry. So Gamma Frisius is just one building block in that ecosystem. And we have created lots of spin-offs with other partners than just Gamma Frisius. So the 65 are just one example, but there are many more spin-off companies. In total, we have created over 150 spin-off companies with other partners beyond or besides, alongside Gamma Frisius Fund. You also see ELAT on the bottom of this slide. ELAT is the Eindhoven-Leuven-Aachen triangle. We understand that a Leuven ecosystem is important, but we need to internationalize that ecosystem as well. And the first level of internationalization is, of course, Europe in our case. And this meant that we have created an ecosystem comprising the activities in Eindhoven with the Technical University, with ASML, with Philips, and many, many other companies in precision mechanics, in mechatronics, etc. Leuven, as I just explained, and Aachen with research centers as RWTH, so the Technical University in Aachen, but also Forschungszentrum Jülich in Aachen, and a lot of high-tech industry. Because we understand that in order to stimulate the knowledge economy, you need to look not just into your own ecosystem, but you need to connect ecosystems as well. And ELAT is a first level connection of 3 different regional ecosystems. And this brings me to the next slide, because when you build such a high-tech ecosystem, you also want to put emphasis on networking. So we have created horizontal networks. Horizontal networks are networks that are not linked to a particular technology domain, but they're bringing together entrepreneurs, what we call like-minded people. So Leuven Mindgate, Leuven.inc, Smart Hub at the provincial level, at the level of the province of Vlaams-Brabant, so Flemish Brabant, which is the province to which Leuven belongs. Those are horizontal networks where entrepreneurs can meet with academics amongst themselves, start to learn from like-minded people. And then we have vertical networks, which are technology clusters. I'll just pick one. LSEC, for instance, is a technology cluster on everything that is related to cybersecurity, and that unites researchers in the area of cybersecurity researchers belonging to the university, researchers belonging to IMEC, but also a lot of startup companies in the Leuven area that are engaged in cybersecurity products, processes, services, etc. And as you can see from this slide, we have created many of those vertical networks because on the one hand, you need to bring together entrepreneurs to learn from one another's experience, but on the other hand, you need to bring a specific thematic technological focus as well in order for people to step up the level of specialization and also hook up into international technological communities relevant to their technology domains. And this brings me to the next slide, which then of course also highlights the need for such an infrastructure, an ecosystem infrastructure, because it's about competencies, it's about knowledge, it's about institutions, but it's also about location. And here you just see an artist's impression of one of our science parks. And in the meantime, we have like 5 different types of science parks in the Leuven area, hosting different companies, research institutes, and hosting all the ingredients necessary for the triple, quadruple, multiple helix to operate. And this brings me to a next slide, which then illustrates the importance of students. And the next slide just gives some example of a community that we have created in Leuven for over 10 years now. It's called the KIC community. It's a community for innovation-driven entrepreneurship among students, where we pay a lot of attention to startup support whenever students want to create a business, community building, students becoming part of an entrepreneurial community, and of course, skill building. We have KIC Academy, where students can develop and gain skills that are needed when you start developing a business. Skills in the area of how to set up a company, how to run a company, financial management, etc. So this KIC community, on the next slide, gives some impression. This KIC community comprises different student bodies, like for instance, the first part on this slide, academics for companies, academics for technology, Economica, which is the economic student body. So a lot of student associations support the KIC community. Then you have the horizontal networks that I was referring to. And of course, you also have the support of the university, Leuven Research and Development, and the different faculties in the university. So it's a community building within and across the boundaries of the university. And this brings me to the next slide, because the next slide highlights just some activities. We organize startup fairs. We have students getting in touch with funding organizations. We have students getting in touch with venture capitalists, and we have students getting in touch with entrepreneurs that may help them join forces to create a new business. And every year we have various of those startup fairs in Leuven, which bring together hundreds of students at the moment, dozens of startup company ideas with investors and with other entrepreneurs. So the next slide then brings us to the TTO, Leuven Research and Development, which is kind of the spider in the web that should help innovate at the intersections in the ecosystem that I just highlighted. And I'll be a bit quick now, but I want to highlight the different activities we have in Leuven Research and Development. So please, the next slide. Leuven Research and Development has been created as an interface to promote and support knowledge and technology transfer between university and society. So we are in between the researcher community and the market societal community. We do 3 major activities: research collaboration, spin-offs and regional development, developing the ecosystem I was just referring to, and protection of intellectual property and licenses. The next slide, please. We have a double 2-tier type organization. We have a central multidisciplinary staff where we support the activities that I just mentioned. And then we have over 2,000 researchers and almost 600 supporting staff that work, that do their activities within the labs across the university. So we have a central staff and we have research divisions. And this brings me to the next slide. And the next slide shows how those research divisions, the green lines, are embedded across faculties, across departments within the university. Those are the blue lines on the graph. So we have research divisions that are interdisciplinary, that do all the work with industry and that cut across departmental and faculty lines within the organization. And this brings me to the next slide. The next slide that once again summarizes what we do. Manage research collaborations, protect and exploit IP, set up spin-off companies, provide incubation instruments, and sustain the high-tech ecosystem. And the ingredients of the high-tech ecosystem were highlighted before. So the next slide, please. What do we do in terms of research collaboration? It is still the founding activity of Leuven Research and Development. We have thousands of research collaborations every year going on. And what we do, of course, is related to negotiating contracts, following up on contracts, managing the research files financially, because we do the financial and people management of all the collaborations that go on with industrial partners. So that's a first activity. The second activity, and that's the next slide, has to do with, so here first you see some examples. So as I said, about 3,000 new collaborative research agreements with companies in 2020 and 177 million euro income from that research collaboration. So that's still the research collaboration side. So now let's move on to the next slide and the next activity, which has to do with intellectual property. Once again, it's about creating awareness, but it's more than just awareness. It's about assessing the patentability and the market potential of an invention, determining the protection strategy, drafting and filing patent applications, procedures and costs to be followed up. And of course, it's not just about patents, but it's also about non-disclosure agreements, about material transfer agreements and license agreements. And of course, bridging out and reaching out and bridging building bridges towards industrial partners. So that's what our intellectual property activity is all about. Next slide, please. And that intellectual property activity is a foundation also for creating spin-off companies. And in spin-off companies, what do we do? Well, once again, we develop business plans, we validate business models, we offer legal support, we help put together a competent team, we look for investors, infrastructure, we help companies scale, we promote entrepreneurship also among students, and we stimulate regional development. So all the ingredients that I have highlighted with respect to our ecosystem, or KU Leuven Research and Development ecosystem, are at play and at work when looking into spin-off companies. Next slide, please. And the next slide shows that it pays off, because if we look at the time horizon 2005 till 2020, then we will see that we have invested from the university and from our seed capital fund a sizable amount of money, several tens of millions of euros in those spin-offs. But this is a small amount compared to what third parties have invested, about 1.2 billion euros in that portfolio. So we have created an enormous leverage effect from the university and from our seed capital fund to third parties investing in our spin-off portfolio. And that's what's really keeps the ecosystem going in terms of financial resources, because thanks to those third parties, we have created a lot of leverage effect also financially. And the next slide, please, then tries to summarize everything that I have been highlighting. So Leuven Research and Development really acts as a networked ecosystem incubator. We have the science parks and the regional embeddedness. We have the financial world, we have industry, and then we have Leuven Research and Development as part of the university. We are also linked to the university hospitals and the clinical trial center. I haven't delved and deep into that because of time constraints, but you see that also the university hospitals are an important element in our ecosystem strategy. And then we have LRD together with our spin-off companies, or vertical technology platforms, our seed fund, and our student body. So Leuven Research and Development really acts as a networked ecosystem incubator. And I think this brings me to the end of my presentation, meaning that I definitely would like to thank you for your attention, and I look forward to questions during our panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor DEBACKERE, for the inspiring lecture. Now, we invite Dr. Shin Kim, the Acting Associate Vice President, Knowledge Transfer, and the Director of Technology Transfer Center, APCIEE, to give us a lecture on creating impact from innovation and entrepreneurship development in the university. Dr. Kim, please.
Good morning, everybody. My presentation consists of two parts. The first part is general introductions, and the second part is related to the HKUSD specific topics. Oh. All right, okay, thank you. Whenever we talk about the economic impact from the university research, we cannot escape from US universities. This is the data from autumns. And you can see the number of companies they created. And this is of 2020. You can see the number of the deals they have. But we don't need to forget that they have invested is 87 billion US dollars per year for this research. So whether this result is impactful, but they have accumulated this knowledge of their how the knowledge is transferred to the society, and then as a impact, creating company, creating products. So this is like a best example in the world. So everybody talk about this, US is the best. So when it comes to the best example they have, I always pick up this one. This is a recombinant DNA technology that start from this Stanford and the UCSF. And two professors, actually, started some conference in Hawaii. They discuss about how to make this, the big chemical factory to make in the cell level. So that means that they put the different type of recombinant DNA into the bacteria, and they produced the protein we want. This is the start of the biotechnologies. But when they discussed, they didn't follow patterns. They just, the news article in New York Times, at that time is Neil Limer. He was the part of the research office, realized the potential of these technologies. Then he created the technologies licensing office in Stanford. And he go together, make a research collaboration agreement to file patents and research. And eventually they make a licensing programs. So this one technology has created the 468 companies, 2,442 new products with a 35 billion product sales. And yes, they have a 255 million US dollars as a licensing fee. Not only for that, is they create a startup company with the Swanson is a venture capitals. That was acquired by Roche in 2009 for $6.8 billion. This is one of the best example is from the university. There is another interesting example is related to the MRI technologies. More at the same time, early 1970s, is two professors, is Paul and Peter, they published the potential is the MRI technologies. They get the Nobel Prize together, but you can see what Paul mentioned, that this work, university patent and rejected the patent applications. So he gave up and he moved to other places. But for the Peter, this technology is the university actually work together with the British Technology Group and other universities. Eventually, they made an MRI. So they received the tons of licensing fee, but not only for that, they actually created from this type of very low technologies and then going back to this type of images. I don't know how many lives they saved. Maybe millions of lives was saved from their development. This is the impact we want to create. So if you understand this how it happens, we need to understand the innovation value chain. It consists of multiple parties. Normally, the university started from the discovery, which is a scientist, they do it, their motivation is a curiosity. Just curious as to what to do it. And then this one have to be done by engineers to make materialize it. That means that they prove the concept, then eventually have to make something workable. Not only here, and they move to the business. And this businessman, their motivation is the revenue and the profit. And goes to the consumers and the end users is their benefit, the cheaper, better, faster type of things. However, you can see the normal occupation of this, the scientists and engineers and the businessmen and end user is very different. And not to forget, the value of an earlier part of value chain is decided by later part of the value chain. So whatever you make as a businessman, the value decided by your customer. Whatever technology you have is decided by the businessman whether we want to bring it out or not. So these are difficulties because we have a different type of people and different motivations and different occupations. How do you work together? If you go to the biomedical technology, getting worse. It's, you can see there are another parties involved in the regulatory, and the product design is not just a simple product design. You need to know all these regulations and the GMPs and the clinical trial centers all involved in. The box over here, especially in Hong Kong, is not quite strong at this one. So it gives us some difficulties. So we call it as a absorptive capacity issue. The absorptive capacity means that when the new technology going to the company, whether they have a capability to convert into the new product or not. So you can see this x-axis is normally is a technology readiness level, TRL. Is a TRL3 is like a proof of concept stage. TRL6 is around working sample engineering sample stage. TRL9 means that you are going into the production. It's a pilot production type of things. For the biomedical has some different definitions. So normally the university technology development is around TRL3 or 4, around there. And who has the absorptive capacity of this technology? Yes, definitely, world leading companies, multinational companies. They just need your idea because they are faster than us. So world leading companies, multinational companies are the best partners. They have everything. They have money, resources. Second is the spin-off company. This is a very interesting guys. In many cases, the spin-off guys, they don't know what they are doing, but they just do it. So starting from the ideas, they bring all the way to the products. And there are large-sized companies, small-sized companies. There is a clear absorptive capacity gap. This is the difficulties that I show in the previous pages. There is the value chain coordination is necessary, but some of them, even in the company, there is a gap in absorptive capacities. This is the Hong Kong case. You can see this is a R&D performed by university 2018. And Hong Kong is the 50.4% is done by university. It's a really, really bad news. What does that mean? Is Hong Kong doesn't have a company's R&D capabilities. You can see the leading innovation communities like China, US, is about 13%, South Korea is 8.5%. That means that university is only doing about 90%, 80% of the research. All the others is done by company. So that means that there has a huge suction power from the company, and then they can bring it out to the market. In this context, our HKUST has been working on to overcome these issues. Then we fairly focus on the startup strategies. Now we are moving to the Greater Bay Area. We are setting up the Guangzhou campus. Why that is important? Because the area of GBA is only 56,000 square kilometers, is less than 1% of the China. But GDP, the 40% of the China is a PCD pattern is from this region. And 20% of the China business with the R&D is from this region. That means that if you compare with the current situations, and it will combine with this, That means that the university will have a huge capabilities with the company out there. So that's why, in terms of knowledge transfer, our Guangzhou campus development is gonna be one university, two campus, gonna be important for us. All right. So going to the HKUST, this is the idea to the impact in our university. We have faculty members and the bright ideas. Eventually, we want to create the impact. What do you mean by impact in technology transfer is that new product services and the startup company, they create the GDP and they create a job. And then based on our research, government change policies, we change the rules, it benefits to the society. So that is typical meaning of the impact we have. So how we create this impact, the university research, we get the inventions and we do the IP management, technology incubation, startup incubations. So we have 1,700 active patents, and we have a 3-way to communicate with industry. First one is the direct licensing. We create IP, the IP transfer to the company, and company create the product. Second one is that if there is no company, we create the company and license to them. So this startup is one of the most active knowledge transfer. We transfer not only for knowledge, but also for people. We create the people and they're going out with the knowledge. So we have 60 startups with the university technologies. And then last but not least is related to the industry engagement and the collaborations. This is a very important thing. Yes, existing company work together, create the impact. Last but not least is entrepreneurship development is also a very important thing. As we want our students has an entrepreneurial spirit. The entrepreneurial spirit means that they have a strong desire to materialize their ideas without full knowledge or full resources. So last 5 years, we have about 467 startup company incubated. 25% of our students was engaged in our entrepreneurship development activities. Things is the quality of research, is not the value of IP, it's not the business potentials, and then it's not the impact in society. To make it equal, there is a lot of activities necessary. Then we start from the IP, because this is a first institutional interface with the research society. Why university have to file a patent is different from why company have to file a patent. Because university is not the product owner. We don't make any product. The reasons why we have to file a patent is that we need to attract next part of the innovation value chain, which is a company. We don't get the company in, then our IP stay as IP. So we need to attract innovation partners. We need to motivate them because they can get certain exclusive right for their products with our IP that is motivate the company to invest into our technologies. So we also have to secure university freedom to operate. We do something, if somebody filed a patent first, then we are losing our freedom to operate. So we have to keep our freedom to operate. Yeah, we have to enhance the relevance and then some financial returns. It's make some workable ecosystem. In many cases, this is a bicycle. When we engage a company, our researcher give presentations and everybody was impressed about their one. And then after that, ask for the patents. And then they keep silent because the patent's quality is not there. Then researcher may feel that, oh, I was cheated. If the company take everything, every ideas, but they didn't come back to me. Then there is a distrust to happen. Then it's going back worse and worse. So always starting point is that licensing is something like a sales of the IP. If you don't have IP, nothing to sell. If your product, which is IP, has no quality, then you cannot get the right price. So we have to change it, start from the IP management. And that's why this is US universities over 10 years, how much they spend. For example, like MIT, they spend $200 million for patenting processes. And many of them spend about $100 million over 10 years, which is that $10 million per year, or $20 million per year. They spend much more money than Asian universities is spending per patents. why they understand the importance of a claim. So in our universities, you can see the number of patents is increasing. And importantly, we have our mainland operation has started to generate about 20% of the patent stock. And we have a microelectronics, advanced materials. In our office, we provide the patent landscaping, and for the industry analysis is some of the major research projects. And we put our technology portfolio in two-dimensional sessions. X-axis TRL, Y-axis is market potentials, size of the bubble is a number of patents. So we put this one and we put our strategy, how we want to bring it out. For example, like Alzheimer's disease, we have in Hong Kong centers, what is a commercialization route is a startup. In some cases, like medical imaging, so we did the bridge gap funds and the startups. So these are some ideas. We need to know what we have. And the second one is that how do you want to bring out together? Then we need to have strategies to make. So based on this switched a little bit about this entrepreneurship development. We have, in Hong Kong, has about 18 unicorns, and 7 of them has from our university. We have shown very strong leadership in entrepreneurship development, and these good examples actually create a lot of followers. So this is a unicorns already more than $1 billion US. Next unicorns is the more than 1 billion RMB valuation for now. And next price is several hundreds and growing about 250, the potentials we have. So that is the current status. And how do we do it? And we have a teaching and learning on the entrepreneurships and engagement events, competitions, and the startup fundings. We have an entrepreneurship fund is $50 million. We have this co-investment partners has about $10 billion investment pool. And these are some government collaborators. And so we have to bridge the gap. How we want to bridge the gap is the funding. And then we use the government funding, joint research institute, and institute those who have the translational capabilities. It's strategically plugged into the gap for the individual technologies. So we have a list of fundings. It's the technology incubations and the entrepreneurship development for the startup teams and the funding for startup teams. So we have a tissue funding is from government, 8 million per year. And the entrepreneurship fund is our investment fund is $50 million we have. So in terms of industry engagements, we have a variety of the mode. We have a joint lab, we have a joint research institute, and the project-based collaborations. In terms of industry collaboration by this joint research institute, recently we engaged the Bright Dream Robotics and the Kaiser, and combined together is over 2 years, we spent about $100 million for translational technologies by the collaborations. And I want to emphasize the importance of a technology transfer office. This is something many government officers has not, they don't understand the importance. It's like Singapore or South Korea, they have a systemic way to grow tech transfer people. It's like South Korea has a 4,000 tech transfer program, so they grow 4,000 staff, understand the technology transfer. So what they do, they need to understand the IP, contract law, and then most importantly, they need to identify disruptive potential of technologies. You can remember what the MRI image, the first paper was just a small 2 dot. Then these tech transfer people should have their imaginations to draw the cross-section of the human body. That's the important thing, and the strategies. And they should know how to do it. Startup investment, and then industrial collaboration, deal structuring, and then communications is important, and the result-oriented, in a way, is combination of this crystal ball together with Superman. It's very difficult, but if you don't have these people, the innovation process is very slow. The tech transfer office can accelerate and enhance the efficiency. So this is my concluding pages. is there are three key factors if you want to make university innovative. The first one is excellence. I don't need to talk about it. You need to have excellent research, excellent people. Second one is the relevance, is that how do I know what we are doing is relevant with the current problem or future problems? So you can understand the several ways to do it, whether who is citing your paper, and then who is citing your patents. And this is some of the ways you can understand whether my research has a relevance or has a potential to address the problems. Then convergence is more difficult because we need to have all the value chain players. If you have a 99%, if you miss 1%, then we cannot make the impact. So university should be able to collaborate with these innovation partners. It's including industry partners, venture capitals, and also government people, and the multinational companies is combined together. So it's all together. It's a university excellence, has a relevance with the current problem, with future problem. And then eventually with this convergence, then we can create is the university technology getting into the impact. All right, thank you very much.
Currently, we have Professor Kazuyuki Motohashi, professor at the Research Center of Advanced Science and Technology and head of department at Advanced Interdisciplinary Studies at the Graduate School of Engineering in the University of Tokyo. He will be giving us a lecture on the role of university and local industry in forming entrepreneurship ecosystem in Japan. Professor Motohashi, please.
Okay. Thank you for introduction, and I'm very happy to see some of the professors over there, particularly thanks for inviting me for the speaker, Professor Xun. Even we cannot see face to face, but still it's kind of good for me to meet you in online. I'm now working as a research center for advanced science and technology at the University of Tokyo, but I'm also involved with the teaching at the engineering school in the department of TMI, technology management for innovation, and this place is combined with university industry headquarters of University of Tokyo, so which is a similar type of organization inside the Tokyo University as the previous speaker. And we have a lot of practitioners for technology licensing and university spin out from University of Tokyo. And then I'm on research side, but we are jointly organizing the education program at the University of Tokyo as well. So today I'd like to talk about, let me share my screen now. So I like to talk about the basically. I did some research on university startups all over Japan, not only at the University of Tokyo, but for all over Japan. And so this paper is basically joined with Kan Byung-woo. He's a Tsutsubashi University professor, and what we are looking at demand side of university startup, because we have already known that from previous speakers talking about, of course, university is a kind of excellent place to create new knowledge, new scientific findings. But of course, when you are talking about innovation, which is the commercialization of such technological contents, you need a demand. So you have to transfer something which is quite abstract as a scientific finding into the real world applications. And so I see a lot about, we see a lot about innovation ecosystem, entrepreneurship ecosystem at the regional level. So how local industry influence those university startups. So this is our basically paper is talking about. So before I'm jumping into the contents of our research, I'd like to explain you about some backgrounds. So because so this is I would say that a common understanding among many countries, including Japan, OECD countries, or outside OECD, so China, or maybe other developing countries too, to see that so linear model of innovation is changing to more co-evolution type. For example, I get involved with one of the projects under the OECD, looking at science innovation co-evolution. So something like, so linear model is talking about science and then innovation industry. But now we are actually looking at the distance between science and industry pretty much become very close. And particularly we see that those kind of trend in data analytics type, so AI machine learning type of applications. So in this sense, of course, university is very important as a source of startups. So which used to be the case for a long time. But it's more, I would say, university playing as a kind of key part for this co-evolution process, because sometimes it's not something like professor research something and this is going to industry, but so industry and university professors are working together, and university startups is particularly, it's not just collaboration, but some sort of university findings directly feeds into industry applications. So this is, so now under the era of this, science innovation co-evolution, university startups become much important relatively as compared to university industry collaborations. And as I told you that there are high-tech entrepreneurial ecosystem, which is of course Silicon Valley is very famous. And also I used to work on Shenzhen together with my ex PhD student. They got professorship job at in Shenzhen, some of them. And of course, as regards to Shenzhen, I have been visited to Hong Kong many times because as a Great Bay Area scheme, I think Hong Kong basically demand places could be in the mainland China or Shenzhen or Guangzhou, whatever. So and now as I told you that AI era, those co-evolution is going on, then there are lots of startups we can find very near University of Tokyo headquarters, which is called the Hongo campus of University of Tokyo in Tokyo. And so this is called the Hongo Hill because we are not in a valley, we are in a hill. But anyway, so the again, so another background which I should talk is that because NIS, so which is National Innovation System, characteristics of Japan is sort of big company dominating. So in this sense, of course, in some sense it's good. For example, like automotive industry, Japan has an industrial competitiveness. So based on this large company-based system, but now lots of change, even in the automotive industry, autonomous driving, MaaS, which is mobility as a services. So from manufacturing to the services kind of industry, change is going on. Depends on digitalization of economy. So in this sense, lots of experimentation is required, and then only big company cannot cope with those changing environment. So in this context, so this entrepreneurship ecosystem is become a very important policy issue as a Japanese government as well. Okay, so I just go over very quickly about what is Japan innovation system. So this is so GDP R&D ratio, and Japan is a number 2, so which is about 3.2% in 2019. After Korea, which is about more than 4%. But when we look at so basically Japan is quite much intensity of the R&D activity are great at the macro level. But most of the R&D spenders a big company. So this is actually pie chart showing you that the top 20 companies in Japan, which is spending in R&D, starting from Toyota Motors, Honda, Panasonic. So you can see that kind of famous automotive or electronics or some pharmaceutical companies you can see in this list. And what is outstanding from this picture is that there are 20 companies, top 20s, has more than 50% of the whole private investment of R&D. So which means that R&D activity are pretty much concentrated in big company, excuse me. So this is sort of characterizing Japan's national innovation system or innovation ecosystem. So in a sense that you can see in the center, there is some, let me use some pointer. So here you can see that, I hope that you can see this, but anyway, so the orange one, which is a big company, and the big company inside there's a big R&D, sector, because Toyota spend a lot in R&D, together with their affiliated company, subcontractors, whatever. So they have their own closed ecosystem, and which is kind of self-contained. So which means that you can see university, in the right-hand side, in a blue, circle. So because they are self-contained, they used to not have great incentive to work together with university. So university is kind of, you do research, maybe education, and we do some innovation. So those are the kind of mindset of a big company. But so recently, so this is, good in a kind of continuous innovation, like Kaizen, TQC. So this is very important for automotive industry, product, quality improvement. But when the new, technology, something like AI, big data, sensoring, try to make dynamic shift in automotive industry to more services industry with lots of data analysis or autonomous driving. So in this sense, this kind of things is very weak in a disruptive change because those are things with lots of experiment with different views. Because within one company, it's very difficult to have some diversity, different kind of view on a new subject. Okay, so excuse me. Let's see it. So I cannot see it. I'm sorry. Maybe I think that. Oops. I think there are some thing out of. Let me share. I'm sorry. To another slide. Yeah. Yeah. So now I try to start, sort of university startup situation in Japan. Yeah, and so this is, I mean, there are some survey by METI, so Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, on innovation, university startup. And so this picture is showing that, for example, you can see that in a total, I think this is 2018, so a little bit old, but maybe I will update later about recent figures. But so there is about 2,500 university startup company in Japan, and so you can see from this slide that there is So there is a type of startup. So of course, what is university startup? You need a definition. And most of the startup is a research outcome startup. So basically, I think this is basically, like what you imagine about university startup, in the sense that some company which is based on university technologies. But there are also, student startup. And so collaborative research startup, so which is about very early stage. You have a strong collaboration with university stage of the company. So this is one. And also University Tokyo or other universities in Japan has investment body, which is invested in the startup company as a venture capitalist, sometimes as an angel. So this is a sort of relationship with investment and technological transfer. So which is TLO, technological licensing office, transfer the IP, university IP to young company to start up. But again, so as I told you that out of 2,500, 1,400, so significant portion, this research outcome startup. And this is the sort of, excuse me, this is 2019, but so the timing of their startup. So there are two waves. So one big wave at 2005, there are lots of startup coming. So here is pretty much important institutional change happened in a university system, national university system in Japan, which is incorporation. So national university before 2004, it used to be a government agency. And after that, so this is incorporated, independent agency, which means that university itself have a right to have their own IP, and government also, induce the university to have lots of collaboration with the industry, startup. There are some incentives, lots of incentives going on. But here is a sort of Lehman shock happened, and that's of course hit the innovation, actually activation activities. So it went down. But recently, there are another wave is coming. I think those wave is mainly due to the fact that digitalization. So big data, AI, IoT. So those change, those new tools, which makes a lot of spin out at this moment. And when you break down by university, so Japan's university system, national university is very, very strong as compared to the private. And so University of Tokyo is the biggest one. And so we have, so in this chart, we have about 660 startups out of 25,000. So which means that more than 20% of the startups all over Japan spin out from University of Tokyo. Now this number increased a little bit more than, I think, close to the 800 at this moment. But anyway, so we have a share, University of Tokyo has a share size of startups. And next one is Kyoto, Osaka. Those are the old national university. And Keio and Waseda, so there are two universities in a top 10 list of number of university startups here. And because now, so the focus is entrepreneurship ecosystem. So we sort of, implicit assumption that those, spin out are regionally bounded, right? So, so here is this table. Maybe you cannot see it very well, but so we just divided the location of the startup into 47 prefectures of Japan. So Tokyo is one big prefecture. But Tokyo metropolitan area is not only for Tokyo metropolitan, but also Kanagawa prefecture. For example, Yokohama City is inside Kanagawa, or Saitama, or Chiba. So those are basically commuting, distance to the center of Tokyo. So we kind of divide it up, and this chart is showing that we try to relate startup and university. Location, both locations. And of course that I just colored in a red sign with more than, I think, 10 startups column. And you can see a diagonal axis. You can see the red one. So which means that, of course, lots of startups are starting up at the local. For example, Hiroshima University, a startup, are likely to be startup in Hiroshima. But in a Tokyo metropolitan area, there are some of diagonal because Tokyo, Kanagawa, Chiba, Saitama are kind of combined. One big metropolitan area they consisted. So happen to be Tokyo University startup Tokyo University technology will be used as a startup in a Kanagawa, Yokohama City. It could be the case. And there are some Tokyo, is a big place where knowledge generated. So those, line, there are some red sign here. Is that horizontal line here? Is that Tokyo? Maybe somebody Tokyo University, Tokyo Technology. Of course, Tokyo, not only University, Tokyo, TIT, Waseda, Keio, many other universities located. And then, so those technology are used in a local startup. But again, so the big picture here is, startup are pretty much regionally bounded. So we try to answer why this is the case. So this is basically the paper which we have developed together with Professor Khan. And so we matched basically the strategy is we have a list of startup, and we match this list of startup with the patent data and see how regional characteristics of the patent. So which means that there are some industry patents at the region. For example, we are talking about Hiroshima, let's say. So Hiroshima is a headquarter of Matsuda Motors. I don't know whether you know it or not. One of the car companies in Japan. It's not so big to the Toyota, but it's kind of big, Matsuda. And because Matsuda is in Hiroshima, that's why automotive industry, parts industry, there are some cluster over there. So there is some patent. We can measure, try to measure the technology characteristics, which is related to the industry characteristics in region, and how the startup characteristics by again patent are related to this industry characteristics. So this is basically, it's quite simple things we did. So first things is of course the answer is those which outside university, there are lots of patents. There are a variety of patents is coming out because national university, basically all the national university has full-fledged. They have a department, schools of the discipline. So they have an engineering school, science school. There is some medical school. They have a hospital, and within the engineering school, electrical engineering, chemistry, life science, civil engineering, architecture. So whole, they have whole, set of technology portfolio. But what we found is that those, so the university startup at the regional level are pretty much related to those characteristics by industry. Because, for example, Hiroshima, the headquarters of Matsuda, but they don't have a lot of chemistry-based company. So which means that so the startup, mainly from Hiroshima University, National University, are likely to be the automotive related because here is demand side story is going on, and we also look at these things by type of startup. So whether which is a research outcome, student, collaborator, R&D, technology transfer, or other related. So here there is some, maybe I don't think I have time to explain specification. Maybe I skip this slide at this moment. Maybe for Q&A session, I can answer to your more technical question. So there are some regression results. And basically, you see here is IPC, characteristics by startup are related to the, excuse me. So here is a IPC code characteristics by patent of the local industry are related to the actually university startup IPC. So positive statistical significant sign shows that those two are related to each other. And so here is that we try to see that so because as I told you at the beginning that so METI survey classifying the type of startup into four or five parts. So which things are more related? What kind of startups the industry characteristics are driven for university spin out more or less? So what we have found is that the tech transfer startup have require more regional proximity to the industrial structure as compared to the other related is basically investing relationship, because when you invest in university, invested, so it doesn't matter where their startup are, right? So I think those local, I would say, proximity are not required very much for this invested relationship. But tech transfer is because it's not, when you license your technology or IP to your license the technology, so it's not just the end of, starting, the end of the story, but it's kind of starting of the story, because there are lots of know-how you need to, collaborate. So of course, this company may be, better to come to university to talk with a professor who invented those IP. So those kind of, the location doesn't matter very much for this type of, startup. So student and collaborative research startup is kind of a big portion. But so as compared to those other type, so this is in the middle. Of course, again, in general, I think those startups are driven by local industry structure, but the order of, requirement of the regional proximity, tech transfer type, and then collaborative research student type, and finally, investment relationship type. I don't know whether I have. Okay, so maybe I'm kind of running out of time already. But anyway, so I try to finish up quickly. So this is kind of characterizing. I don't know which is maybe it's kind of complicated kind of story. So I just try to reiterate that. This is university pattern. University has a whole set, but there are some local industry. Red one so yellow one, university have lots of patent because university have a whole range of discipline schools, and local industry, but there are some characteristics for the local industry. When you're talking about Tokyo, like a metropolitan area, you have a variety of industry you have. But when you go to outside, like Hiroshima, Hokkaido, Fukuoka, those places, there are some characteristics, local characteristics. And those university patents, which is startup patent, have blue one, which is more inclined toward those industry characteristics at the region. So let me finally I talk about two examples of clusters in Japan, because ecosystem, entrepreneurs ecosystem by university startup are pretty much heterogeneous across region and across type of industry they are doing. So one example is Hongo AI here. So as I talked to you, so this is very dense network. So very regionally bounded, because this AI artificial intelligence, we have a couple of unicorn company as well. So University of Tokyo, we have, as I told you, that 700 about the startups. So there is I think that more than 30, I think close to 30, exited company already, and also I think it's 5, not 5, 4, 3 or 4 kind of unicorn company as well. But anyway, so AI is machine, this artificial intelligence, but very human based, right? So you don't have to have lots of facility. Maybe you have computer. You need a big computer and data, but the human capital is very important. That's why. So it's very regionally bounded. So within, I would say, 5 kilometers from center of University of Tokyo, maybe 10 kilometers. So something like a walking distance. There is a lot of startup company spinned out of those. There are some list of the company here, but anyway. And when you looking at Hokkaido, maybe you know the northern island of Japan. So there is also bio industry cluster in Hokkaido with many universities. Of course, Sapporo is the capital of Hokkaido, which are the most dense, I would say, location of startup companies. But you need a space. For example, because of bio industry, there are agriculture, there are some, some materials. So here is some you need some factory. So there is the beer brewery by Sapporo, beer brewery. So those things you need some space, right? Not only just human capital. So in this case, so there because they have a lot of space, there are a lot of industry, those industry. That's why I think they have their more widely distributed ecosystem they are creating. But of course, smart specialization is very important because in a knowledge you need to have some local proximity. So finally, I don't like to spend some time to just repeating what I said, but maybe I just focusing on the implications out of this. My study is first of all, so university startup promotion policy should be designed on a basis of regionally competitive industry characteristics. I think this is the case in Hong Kong as well. Maybe we will talk about these things in a panel session. And particularly the case for the tech transfer startups is important. So when you tech transfer activity, you need a regional proximity more as compared to regular, I would say, spin-out company like research base. And density of spatial distribution depends on industry technology. As I told you that AI here, Congo here, very, very dense. But agriculture or biotechnology cluster have to be some space. So that's all my presentation, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Professor MOTOHASHI, for the inspiring lecture. Now, we invite Professor Xun WU, Associate Professor and Deputy Director at the Nanyang Center for Public Administration, to give us a lecture on academic entrepreneurship and innovation, a Singapore case. Professor Wang, please.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm very glad to be part of the panel and to discuss this very important topic. Thanks for the invitation, Professor Wu. So let me share my slides. Okay, so following the discussion this morning and also yesterday, I will continue the topic on entrepreneurial university, and I will bring you to the context of Singapore. Universities now have been increasingly called upon for their third task in addition to teaching and research. So we do observe their higher propensity to file patents, their increased revenue from the university patent licensing, and also we do see more technology transfer offices set up in different universities. The number of academic entrepreneurship or university startups or spin-offs is also increasing over time. For the academics, they are motivated to do entrepreneurial activities because they feel there's a peer recognition, they feel there's a stimulus for research, they also feel there will be some monetary reward, and also they can have the enjoyment of creativity. But along with the benefits, there are also challenges together with these academic entrepreneurship. So I want to discuss a little bit of that in my study. Singapore has been a very special case for innovation policy because the government of Singapore has been behind the development of the economy and the industry from the very beginning, starting from the 1960s, from this labor-intensive manufacturing to in the 1980s to develop high tech, but mainly to attract FDI. And starting from the 1990s, the Singapore government has changed their focus to do more R&D. They try to attract the multinational companies to set up their regional headquarters in Singapore, and to attract them to set up R&D centers in Singapore. And particularly starting from the 2000s, the focus again is different. Now they want to emphasize the importance of local R&D and to develop the R&D capabilities in the local industry. That's why from the diagram in the top, you can see starting from the 2000s, there are several organizations have been set up, such as the Agency for Science, Technology and Research, the Ministerial Committee on R&D, which is very high level committee to coordinate the R&D activities in different ministries. And they also set up the National Research Foundation in 2006. There's also a 5-year plan in Singapore starting from the 1990s that the government tries to vision the priority areas in the next 5 years. And the 5-year plan starting from 1991 and was named as National Technology Plan. As time goes by, as you can see from the name, the focus of the plan is a bit different. Starting from 1996, science is the element added into the National 5-year plan. And starting from 2011, the name of the plan is changed to Research, Innovation, and Enterprise. So it's called RIE Plan starting from 2015. And now we are already in RIE Plan 2025, which was just announced to plan for the next 5 years. On the very top is the budget associated with each of the 5-year plan. Again, the amount of the budget increasing very rapidly over time. The public expenditure on R&D also is changing its priority areas from basic to applied research. So in 2018, which is the data we have for the most recent public expenditure on R&D, you can see the gap between basic research and applied research, which is the blue bar and the orange bar. The gap has been widening over the years. It shows that the focus of the government or the expenditure in the public institutions have been moved more towards applied research side, including applied research or the experimental development. In the most recent RIE 2025 framework, similar as the previous 5-year plans, they set out the priority areas for the development in the next 5 years, including the manufacturing, the health, biotechnology, and the sustainability and the digital economy. The areas are quite similar or continued from the previous 5-year plan. And also they highlight the importance of academic research, manpower, and innovation and enterprise. So university research is found to be a very important pillar in this innovation framework. They want to emphasize and they want to help the university to grow and to continue to produce the top tier research and to be able to contribute the industrial or economic development. So in this most recent RE plan, in total, there is 25 billion Singapore dollars budget for these 5 years, and 29% of the total budget will be invested in universities. So that is to help university to further grow their research capabilities and to together with the talent development to train the talent for the economy and for the industrial needs. So I want to introduce several programs set up by the different agencies in Singapore to help universities to better perform and to work more closely with the industry. So one of them is called the CREATE program. It's a campus for research excellence and the technological enterprise. So in short, it's CREATE program. So this program was funded by NRF, National Research Foundation. It was approved the same year as NRF was founded in 2006. So 2006 is a milestone that marks the transformation of the innovation policy in Singapore toward more industry development, local industry development. So this program was officially opened in 2012, and the building in the picture is the building house this program. The program is open to universities worldwide, and they asked them to compete for the to compete for the grants set up in Singapore. And they want to, the agency, NIF, wants to fund the most top tier or cutting edge research And one of the requirements is for the universities to overseas to conduct the research in Singapore together with a partner university in Singapore. So the involved universities are included here. There are 9 universities in total for this phase. So they will review the activities and start another round of call, and there will be another set of universities included. So NTU and NUS are the 2 local universities to be involved in this CREATE program. So the idea of this program is to expose researchers and students in Singapore to the cutting-edge research that's going on elsewhere, and also to find ways to seek solutions to difficult problems that are identified by Singapore agencies. They also hope this could be a source of startups or products or technologies. So this is a program that specifically targeted universities. Another program is also launched by NIF in 2013. This is called Corporate Labs at University scheme. So this is to encourage companies to set up their labs inside universities. This is the initiative to encourage the collaboration between universities and industry. So by setting up the lab in the university, they can easily involve the university researchers and students to work on these industrial projects. And in a way that university research can find the need, or whether there's a close connection with the industrial needs. And also they can also train the students to be more familiar with the industrial R&D and will be more ready upon their graduation to work in the industry. Another similar program is called Industrial Postgraduate Program. This program was initiated by the Singapore Economic Development Board in 2011. So this program also encouraged university to work with industry, but from different angle. So for here, the students admitted to the PhD program in the universities have to find an employer or a company partner that to co-supervise their PhD project. And they need to spend at least 50% of the time on the project in the company. Of course, the entire amount of tuition fees and the monthly salary will be funded by EDB. So for the students, the key part is to find a company to work together throughout the PhD training. Of course, in reality, it turned out that most of the students are already employees of the company and they want to pursue or further their PhD training. They came to university to be enrolled in this program to work with the university professor. And this is a way also to link the academic faculty together with the staff from the company and to find out whether there's a common area that they can work together in terms of the project. So with all the pushes behind by the government, we also observe that universities are increasingly more engaged in innovation or in industrial development. So here is the number of patents or invention disclosure from the 2 universities in Singapore, NUS and NTU. There's increasing, of course, it fluctuate a little bit over time, but overall it's an increasing trend from the 2 universities in terms of their patent applications in the case for NUS or patent grants in the case for NTU. For the entrepreneurship output in terms of spin-off companies, we also see some upward trend in terms of the numbers. In some years, they don't have the number. It's only because they don't disclose in their annual report. So does not mean the number is 0 for the particular year. But in the most recent 4 years, we do see the number of spin-offs for the 2 universities. This one shows the amount of project value awarded by external sources. The blue bar indicates the sources funding from government, from the 4 major agencies in the government, including Ministry of Education, National Research Foundation, which was the one founded in 2006, and also Ministry of Health and A-STAR. So these are 4 major funders for academic research, and the blue bar indicates how much they receive from these 4 agencies, and it actually accounts for a huge share of the research funding in the universities. The red bar indicates the funding sources from the industry or nonprofit organizations or foundations or other ministries that are not covered by the 4 major agencies. So in terms of the share, the other funding sources account for around 15%. So if we exclude other ministry agencies, foundations, or nonprofit organizations, we could anticipate the share from the industry will be even lower. But we don't know the exact amount, but will be even lower than 15%. So this brings the question that the funding received from different sources, from the government or from the industry, how this would affect the innovation or entrepreneurship activities in the university. So with that question in mind, we did a study to examine its impact. So what we did was we start with the whole population of the 3 universities in Singapore. We looked through all the profiles of the faculty members in the 3 universities, and we identified 691 faculty members. So you can see this number is much lower than the number reported by the 3 universities. That's because we only look at those either on tenure track or tenured professors. So they are the faculty members either to be tenured or already tenured. We don't include the lecturers, visiting professors. So the number of faculty members here is much lower than the ones reported by the universities. Among these over 2,000 faculty members, we found 1,400 are in STEM fields. So because of the nature of the research question, we only focus on the faculty members in the STEM fields. We sent out a survey to all of them, and we received 276 responses from the whole population. That translated to about 20% of response rate. So with that survey, we put together data from other sources as well, including CV. This is the data we found from the website, or we call the profile data. When we check the website of each university, we can collect their experience, their name, gender, title, education, employment history. So this is the data we can find from their website. We have the survey to ask about their innovation experiences, and also we search for their publication and the patent data. So we match all these data together for our analysis. So this is what we have. For the 276 respondents, we found that majority of them are in 30s or 40s, could be the golden age for innovation. And most of them are educated elsewhere. They have 90% of them receive their PhD education in other countries, mostly in US and UK. Only 10% are locally educated in Singapore. In terms of gender, it's quite disproportionately that male dominated this STEM field, which is also consistent with the distribution in other studies for STEM faculty. And this discipline-wise, we have engineering, physical science, mathematics, and the life sciences. So here is the patenting activity of the faculty. We found about a quarter of them have at least 1 patent. It also means that majority, 3/4 of them don't have any patent. So among the quota who have at least one patent. We notice like most of them have only one or two. But it's also quite interesting to observe that the top patent holders, those with 12 and 13 patents, are female. Even though female are a very small proportion in the STEM faculty example, but they are the top patent holders. We also try to look at, this is our key question here. We try to look at how industry funding and government funding affect their entrepreneurial activities. We look at several indicators for the entrepreneurial activities, including whether they have patent licensed or not, whether they involved in consultancy activities or not, and whether they serve in the advisory board, and whether they set up spin-off companies. So these are the 4 entrepreneurial activities we checked in our survey to all the respondents, and we also asked for their funding sources. So by running some regressions and also doing the matching, we find that industry funding indeed has quite positive and significant impact on the 3 activities, including the license of patents, consultancy, and advisory activities. On spin-off, it's like marginal positive. It's not so significant, but still it's positive overall. For government funding, we do not see any significant impact of government funding on any of the entrepreneurial activities. So we do find the difference in the funding source on the entrepreneurial activities of the faculty members. Also in the survey, we asked for the reasons why they want to participate in the collaboration with the industry. What are the main motivations behind? And we found out that most of them indicate they want to learn about the practical applications of their research, and they want to get inspiration for the projects and to access resources and to have some recognition of the expertise outside of academia. So these are the main cited reasons for their collaboration with the industry. We also want to find out what are the major barriers in their collaboration with the industry. And the one mostly mentioned barriers are the partners, the issues with identifying partners. So the top barriers listed here are all related with the partners, whether they can find the suitable partners or whether the partners will be interested in their research, or whether the partners will be willing to continue the research that is ongoing now, and whether there's a mismatch of research areas. So all of these are related with the partners. And for the other reasons, whether there's government support, university support, or the restrictions in research dissemination or IPR conflict, these are cited as less important in terms of the barriers. So we conclude that to find the right partners and to find partners with similar interests or similar research agenda might be the most important barrier in the in promoting collaboration between university and industry. So the policy implication for this might be to have some platforms to introduce academics with industry partners to help them to find out each other, and also to see whether the industry partners will have the right interest or right research agenda with the academics that will allow them to have more collaboration in the future. Okay, that's my last slide. I think, yeah, this is all. And thank you for your attention. I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you, Professor Wang, for your sharing. Regarding the technical hiccups we were experiencing just now, on behalf of the organizing committee and my colleagues, we apologize for the delay. That must have been quite confusing at times. But now I'm certain that Dr. Ko's presentation can provide us with some clarity on the theme today. May we invite again Dr. Ko to the stage to give us a lecture on innovation and technology for inclusive growth. Dr. Ko, please.
Yeah, before I start, I should also apologize for the technical delay as well. And thank you very much, the team, for solving it very effectively. My talk is on innovation for inclusive growth. Before I start, I think I owe you a little bit of introduction of myself and my university. I come from a Nanyang University. It's a liberal arts university in Hong Kong, and it's the smallest university in Hong Kong, and it's the one that proudly doesn't have an engineering or science department. So with that background, I think it explains a lot on why my presentation is going to be significantly different than the previous speakers. My background is also in engineering. My training is in mechanical engineering. My PhD was in robotics and artificial intelligence. That was some 15 years ago, when Hong Kong was still talking about logistics and everything, and no one was funding robotics. But I still work with a few friends to start a company called Insight Robotics, and we use artificial intelligence to detect wildfire. Back then, it was the most accurate system and was the fastest system. Has been tested by Australian government, Canadian government. We passed with flying color, but no one buys it because they don't have budget. But IBM gave us the Entrepreneur of the Year worldwide in 2014. So I guess that is something to celebrate. So to tell you that is that I want to declare I'm not a technology hater. I'm not a research hater. I'm very passionate about technology and how it can actually make people's life better. At the same time, my research background, business, setting up a startup. I also work in disaster relief organizations. I work with MSF, I work with Red Cross actually as a volunteer engineer in a lot of different part of the world. My first mission was back in year 2000 when there was, I went to Sudan, South Sudan. There was a civil war going on for 13 years already. I spent a half year there to help the medical team to provide clean water, transportation, water and sanitation, fixing radios, and building clinics and everything. And then later on, I continued to work in Uzbekistan during September 11th, supporting our team in Afghanistan. And then I went to 3-4 different earthquake missions, including Pakistan earthquake, tsunami, Yusu, Wenchuan. So all these earthquake missions. And that really changed my understanding of what I have learned in university. I did my PhD in Hong Kong U. So actually, before I start this Insight Robotics, that is being funded quite generously. Before doing that, I actually tried to start a company to design and sell search and rescue robots. I guess you can all understand. And you can imagine how it ended up. It just collapsed very quickly, that company. So the role of a research university, I think something very interesting is everyone doing research in university, they want to make people's life better. Not only in the city, it's also in rural area, in developing countries. We have very broad vision. We want to make changes, whether to improve people's health, improve our control over the climate, and so on. But the reality is, if we look back in the last 20 years, or keep on looking back, further back, a lot of the very promising technology, a lot of technologies that we're using every day are not really being applied in where people really need it, right? A lot of time when I share with students, I always describe that us doesn't matter whose salary is higher here. We are already the world 20% of the wealthiest population in the world. We can have this climate control room. We can have warm clothes and food for sure on our table, television, education, and everything for free. We are already the 20% wealthiest population in the world. But what about the other 80% of the population? So at Ningnan University, I actually, before going to Ningnan, I spent 15 years at University of Hong Kong, organizing a lot of experiential learning projects and supporting engineering students, medical students to design different kind of technology. It's something very fascinating. Some of the technologies are very fascinating, and I would love to share at a different time. But at Ningnan University, it's a very small university. It's 2,600 students, undergraduate students, and doesn't have engineering, doesn't have technology, doesn't have architecture, medicine, no professional degree. So, but still, as a research university, even it's small, we still, our aim is to make an impact, because I think for the simple reason is that Ningnan University is also a public university in Hong Kong, and the goal is still, Ningnan University is the one university in Hong Kong that its motto actually talks about serving people. It's education for service. To my surprise, if you look at all the top universities in the world, not many of their motto actually talk about serving the population. So what we look at is actually, we don't have very strong technology research capacity like UST, Hong Kong U, Chinese U. But what we look at is actually what we call humanitarian technology, one. The other one is what we call inclusive business. These are the two main areas that we try to nurture into our students to empower them to play a stronger role to contribute to the in the future. So this is, let me give you a few examples of what humanitarian technology is about. This is one of the projects that we've been working on. It's called transparent mask, but the full name is transparent air filtration mask. The simple idea is that when we talk about transparent mask, this is the kind of mask we're seeing. Majority of them, especially those you see on TV, they have no air filtration power. All they can do is to shield you from spitting onto someone's face, but it doesn't prevent you from catching COVID. It doesn't prevent you from distributing COVID. So it doesn't really work. But some of those that work are these window masks, semi-transparent with a piece of plastic in the middle. The purpose of making it transparent is because deaf people, hearing impaired people, when they communicate, a majority of them, 70% of the people that we call deaf or hearing impaired, they actually can hear. 70% of them, they can actually hear. So if they can read our lips, they can actually very effectively talk to us without sign language. So when they go to clinics, when they can see the doctor's face, when they go to supermarket, when they can see the cashier's face, they can easily talk to them. Quite often, if you talk to them face to face, when they can read your lips, you won't notice they have hearing problem. So this is why during the COVID, last 1.5 years, we've been working with Hong Kong Deaf Associations to try to develop a kind of transparent mask that have the air filtration capacity, so that parents and kids, teachers and students, they can communicate with, they can have facial communication as well. And so these are some of the other challenge in the design as well. Actually, when you look at this, even we try to call it humanitarian technology, but when you look at this piece of transparent mask with a piece of filter, a lot of engineers sitting in this room will think it's pretty Mickey Mouse. It's very easy to make. But then this is the kind of project that we really want to work on. We work with our students to conduct a lot of survey and design workshops. We look at some of the needs as well. And then we find there's this problem of mycosia. Mycosia is people with hearing impaired problems. Some of them, they don't have the external structure of the ear. So it's impossible for them to have a ear loop. They need to wear a mask with a head loop. So in our design, we try to cater for that as well. And then it turns out we call it a inclusive innovation concept, is to how to make the product as inclusive as possible. So one thing is the design is we can change the anchor on the mask so that it can change from ear loop into a head loop anytime you want. which is very useful for people with mycosia, and it's also very helpful for people who need to wear a scarf because of religious reason or other. Because if you wear the mask first and then put on the scarf, if there's a itch or anything, you can't do anything about it. But if you wear it outside, you could. And this is the final product, what it looks like. It actually, because of we cannot travel to China frequently, and because the fact that we don't have a full engineering department or any of those facilities, it took us over a year just to from the first metal frame to this prototype. And then we also study, because in transparent masks, there are a few problems. One is fogging inside. Actually, all our masks are fogging inside. That's just because it's not transparent, we can't see it. The other thing is the window. When you have the semi-transparent mask, the windows, when you talk, like what I try to do now, you can actually move your mask away from you. So the window will be showing you my chin instead of my lips now. So facial communication is not possible. The third thing is reflection. In a room like this, when the light is pointing directly to me because I'm the speaker, light will be reflecting directly back to the light source. So if you take a picture in front of me, when I have a mask that has a straight, has a vertical front panel, it's going to reflect as well. So reflection, small window, and fogging, these are the three main problems. So we look at the way we solve reflection is we look at the design of majority of the classrooms, offices, and clinics. There are guidelines in Hong Kong that majority of the schools, the height of the ceiling light and the length of the room, they are standard. So we use those as base, and to calculate the incident angle of the light from the furthest point and the nearest point, find out the angle, and then find the reflection angle is going to be exactly the same, right? That is primary school physics. And so we change the angle of this mask by 12 degrees, and that effectively turned majority of the light, direct majority of the reflection down to the floor instead of to the students in front. So this is, but the real, again, even with all that physics and try to make it as complicated as I can, you know, this is a very basic kind of technology. This is not, I mean, when we talk about the role of research university, you probably think this is not for research universities. But what I think is research university, many of them are comprehensive university. They have different disciplines that can actually work together. For a project like this one to actually make an impact in the society, the technology can only do this much. That's it. I already explained to you all the technology behind it. If you think it's useful, use it. But the real challenge is actually how you're going to make people use it. Because I said the design was for the deaf population in Hong Kong, which is about 120,000 in Hong Kong. The challenge is 120,000 of them wearing it is not the solution. It's the rest of us wearing it. That is the solution. How can we make the society wear a mask for someone else's benefit? I think that is what research university, comprehensive university, have the power to make changes from policy, from technology, from social level, or even design. So our designers come up with a lot of different, very appealing design colors. He make reference to New York Fashion Week color and come up with all these designs. The idea is to how to make it as inclusive as possible. The other project is about, we work a lot with subdivided units in Hong Kong, the SDUs. Some of the projects is related to air circulation. So we work with students. Again, our students have no technical background. So we take them to a subdivided unit, visit and conduct survey with the families in subdivided unit, and then learn about their challenges, and then come back. We work with them come up with different kind of technologies and how we can apply them and implement them. And so students came up with the idea that they want to improve the air quality. So they came up with the idea of buying high quality filter with high quality fan into, these are the prototypes. And then eventually it actually turned into a product. We are now working with Carbon Care, Lab, Zhang Chenyao. So these are now actually products that can be used in subdivided units. And the project is partially supported by Jockey Club now. This was another project that we were quite happy about. Using germicidal UV light. The UV light I've actually been using in hospitals and laboratory for disinfection for over 19 years. So it's something very mature, very cheap. It can be, what we did was actually we look at the one in the laboratory and think how we can shrink it. And then we actually, inside of Ningnan, we make fun of ourselves. We said all the light were 100% made in MIT and it was made in Twin Moon. So we actually have students, colleagues came back and help us to build all these units. Then again, even coming from an engineering background is almost impossible not to make simple things more complicated than they are. So we install we build an app on iPad to control it. We build timers, sensors, everything to control it. So the whole system looks kind of like this. But again, this is what it looks like when it's being used. Again, the challenge is not the technology itself. The technology, that's it. Even we try so hard to make simple things complicated, that is all the technology is to it. But the challenge is really the part behind it, how we can bring in cross-discipline expertise, people to think of a way to implement it, right? All those light, the first 50 sets, we built it ourselves, piece by piece. We actually built it ourselves. We wire all the cables and everything. And then we recruit 120 volunteers, train them, muscular people who can actually carry that quite heavy set of light up the subdivided unit, six flight height, and then do the disinfection. So we did all that. But how can we scale up? That is the problem. And this led to the inclusive business idea. Inclusive business is not really just business. More accurately, is inclusive entrepreneurship. How can we scale things up? Very similar to my search and rescue robot. No one is going to buy it. UN is not going to buy it. The government is not going to buy it. And when they need it, it's already too late to buy it. So no one is going to buy it. All this UVC light, air filter, and all these things, it's not going to be a big business. It's not going to meet any of those data standards that boost the university's reputation. It's not going to meet any of those. But how can we actually, through research, through the network of university, how can we help the project to move forward, to scale up? So our work is actually the technology. We have done it. We have showed the possibility of it. And then we look into all these different kind of scale up possibilities. So we open source, put it online, put together all the code, drawings, 3D models and everything, allow people to download it. And the detail of it is painfully long. So make sure everyone can use it. And then other possibility is Ningnan, we don't have engineering, but we have a very sizable social science department. So we work with communities to empower communities to use our light to continue their service. So even until now, Characters and a few other organizations, they're still using this light in different locations to do it. So yeah, humanitarian technology, inclusive entrepreneurship, these are the two things we spend a lot of time trying to nurture the future generation of young innovators. Other projects we work on overseas is transportation. Transportation, this is from Uganda. My first trip to South Sudan was year 2000. I was I was 27, okay? Yeah, 20 years later, right before COVID, the last Christmas before the international travel was banned, I actually visited Sudan again, and nothing changed much. Nothing changed much. So again, a lot of the research that we really want our research to make an impact to the world, to the society. 20 years back to the same place, people still living the same way. And also transportation, these are some of the other projects that we are working on. Wheelchair, for example, something very simple in Hong Kong, but the need for wheelchair is very different in places like Cambodia or Vietnam. When Cambodia and Vietnam, if you visit before, they flood a lot because it rains a lot over there. So every year there are 2-3 months, the part of the village or city is flooded. And so it's very difficult for wheelchair users to move around. Their wheelchair need is going to be very different. The longer wheelbase, the better it is actually for them. But for Hong Kong, we want shorter wheelbase because it's easier to maneuver. Right. So there are a lot of this kind, and the lower right-hand corner is actually a converted wheelchair for pregnant women in developing countries. So there are a lot of this work we can do, but it requires a lot of energy from, not on technology. Technology is simple, but how to scale it up when the user, we don't really have the money to pay for you. Okay, so my summary. Okay. Research relevant to the majority. I think majority is the keyword in this talk. Again, I emphasize right from the beginning, I'm not a technology hater, I'm not a research hater. I just think when we are pushing forward, we need to make sure people behind can also benefit from our technology as well. Because when university cannot fulfill this mission, I think not many organizations can do it better than us. The last one, I think, is the inclusive growth, inclusive education and inclusive growth. In Hong Kong, for example, if you look at all the innovation and startup community, majority of them are highly educated, came back from overseas, the best universities from overseas, speak fluent English and so on. So we don't seem to include everyone. We don't have, out of all the startup companies in Hong Kong, girls, they're underrepresented. Ethnic minority, they're underrepresented. There are lots of room for us to make our innovation community more inclusive. And the thing is, it's not for their benefit, it's for our benefit. Because if you talk to any of the startup or any of those policymakers, one thing they say is, oh, we don't have enough people, the innovative people or innovative power. So if we exclude those non-business, non-technology, non-engineering people outside of the innovation circle, we're going to get even less. Okay. So thank you very much for bearing with my talk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koh, for your inspired sharing. So Dr. Koh, please remain on stage because it's time for the panel discussion section. So may we invite Dr. Wu and Dr. Kim to come to the stage for the discussion. So together with Professor DEBACKERE and Professor Dr. DEBACKERE and Professor MOTOHASHI and Professor Wang online to discuss on the topic, the role of research universities in innovation-led economic growth. So may we pass the time to the guest and to the moderator. Thank you.
Then on? Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the discussion this morning. So I think we have about 30 minutes or 40 minutes for a Q&A session. So maybe I'll just start with a couple of questions and for all the panelists, and then we can open up for Q&A from the audience here. One of the questions that I have when I listen to the discussion about how the various measures taken by the universities and also the industry enhancing the role of a research university. I'm kind of want to know a little bit more about the role and responsibility of establishing the ecosystem here. Right? Here, we hear about what happened in Leuven, for example. You say a capital city of the capital of innovation in Europe, right? So that's actually quite a big statement. So I wonder, to what extent that it just happened, or this is actually take a significant amount of designing from the part of someone, is the university, is the government, is the industry, to really put it together. And that question also, I think it goes for professor from University of Tokyo and also professor from Nanyang Technology University, right? Talking about what might be experiences in Japan and in Singapore. It's about who might bear the major responsibility to design and implement various measures to develop the innovation ecosystem.
Who does start? Do I start or DEBACKERE here?
Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah. Why?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for giving the opportunity to participate. So when maybe a little anecdote to start with. I did my PhD work at MIT in the States. And whenever one of my supervising professors was at Roberts, and has a long history in technology entrepreneurship, both in the Boston area and in Israel. And whenever at Roberts came to visit me in Leuven, he was always astonished because he told me, but why do you do all that effort to create an ecosystem on behalf of the university? At MIT, we don't have to do this. The environment takes care of itself. And I think that was a very important and a very sharp remark, because when you have a well-developed entrepreneurial culture, there is a lot of carrying capacity in the environment. There is a well-developed financial ecosystem. There are many entrepreneurs being attracted to the region, etc. When we started accelerating in Leuven, in the meantime, 25 years ago, there was not very much. So then you need what I would call an anchor tenant. You need someone who wants to pull the game. And that's what the university stepped in to do. So the university leadership really wanted that ecosystem to be developed. But at the same time, you have to understand, and you have seen this in my talk as well, that you cannot do this on your own. So this means that you need to forge partnerships. You need to build attractiveness of your region. And that's why at the same time, we created an organization called Charter Leuven. And Charter Leuven was a group, 25 like-minded people from industry, entrepreneurs, from the financial world, that started to work together to create that architecture. But the university was like, at the same time, assuming the leadership role and the support activities in the first year, because you needed to create new legal structures, you needed to work with the city to create space for incubation, etc., etc. So I think most universities across the world don't have the advantage of having a Boston area-like environment. So you have to start creating the environment, but you cannot do this on your own. You have to forge a partnership with funding agencies, with venture capitalists, with entrepreneurs, with other leaders in the region to do so. And once you do this, you see that you get, after 10, 15 years, we started getting quite some international traction. And that is when the ELAT triangle was created, Eindhoven, Leuven, Aachen, when organizations like RWTH, as a major technical university in Germany, Technical University of Eindhoven, Philips, ASML, etc., started being interested in really forging links between those three local ecosystems to make it a broader ecosystem. So that would be my my answer to that question.
Yeah, Professor MOTOHASHI.
Yes, thank you for your question. So yeah, of course, it's very relevant and yeah, question. And I would say that, so of course, you need to have, because this is something not ecosystem, it's something like an organic mechanism where there are a lot of factors, interactions, and you need to have enough sort of central figure power to attract newcomers is joining in. So I think you need to have some tipping point where, you know, to create something in a mass. And so so University of Tokyo is basically, you know, as I told you that there are lots of startup company. I mean, there are mass of researchers already, and also center of Tokyo. So there are lots of companies. So it's not so difficult to have sort of you know, creation. But in my case, I didn't have a time to explain about Hokkaido, North Island bio industry cluster. But so in this case, you need to have some you know, specialization. You know, sometimes it's called a smart specialization. To create sort of you know, critical mass for even for it's not so, you know, not so much regionally I would say concentrated over the players, but so you need to, you know, find out some particular, you know, strong point for each region to have you know, in your to create some tipping point. Yeah, that's my answer to your question.
Thank you very much, Professor Wang.
Thank you for the question. And I think in the case of Singapore, I still think government is behind everything, including the build-up of this innovation ecosystem. Singapore has quite some years in developing the innovation and high-tech industries, but the thing is, so far, majority of the companies or like producing innovation in Singapore are foreign companies or multinational companies. So talking about the local industry or local companies, they are still quite in the infant stage, if I may borrow the metaphor by Professor Nabaha yesterday. So they are still not grown up yet that can be left by themselves to survive in the market. So there's a lot of support needed from the government to help to push forward the establishment of the startups, and also to help them to grow, to help them to do R&D, to work together with the universities. So the government come up with quite a lot different schemes to support the local industries, especially the startups, to help them to develop their innovation capabilities. And the government is also calling upon universities to be involved in this process to help the R&D or innovation needs in the local industries. So at this stage, I think it will be quite important to have government behind all these development. And I also want to add one thing, because Singapore is such a small country and it has a very limited domestic market. So for all the local industries, they still need to aim for the overseas market. And it will be very difficult for the startups at such early stage if they want to compete in the overseas market. So I think in addition to this, the stage, the life cycle, the infant stage of the local industry, also because of the limited domestic market, the need for the government support in growing the industry, and also to go abroad to compete in the overseas market will be even more important in the case of Singapore. So I think even for now and for the foreseeable future, the government has to play a quite critical role in maintain this innovation system, or even further developing this system to help the industry to build up further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So I wonder if Dr. Kim and Professor Koh would have some observation to make about what might be the lesson for Hong Kong, and based on your experiences, both working here and also the lessons from other places about the role of government and universities in building the ecosystems, innovation ecosystem in Hong Kong.
This question is not easy to answer, actually. I want to divide in two things. One is environment and the ecosystem. Especially for this Hong Kong's environment, it's very different from Boston or very different from Singapore. You know, I spent about 10 years in A-Star as a senior VP to commercialize technology. Singapore, as Professor Wang shared, is a government, is the smartest people over there. They are well-designed, strategic, and then they're driving all these innovation shows. But Singapore is a standalone like a country. So still, I believe about 20% of their GDP is from the manufacturing side, and the very strong petrochemical industry is still there. So in terms of innovation value chain for certain areas like chemical industries, they have a closed loop. That means starting from technology, business, funding, and the big companies, and then market is outside Singapore though, but they have a closed loop. But if you compare with the Hong Kong environment, Hong Kong is not something like a standalone country. It's a city, and like the technologies and the businesses, market, many of the component is not actually inside here. So that means that as a small part of the value chain, especially for the early part of the value chain, university will have a great difficulties to grow. So that's why it's quite natural. Our university is fairly focused on creating startup company. That is a startup company, they create the new businesses, attract the monies, and majority of them, the companies I show you, is their businesses in mainland. That is a smooth transition in this way. So that's why we have to see the environment. That environment has an important role to understand how we want to create the ecosystems. And in terms of a stage of the company or development, there is a very early stage and the later stage and the mature stage. For the very early stage, I believe the government have to do more. That means that nobody gonna help because in the entrepreneurship ecosystems, those who start the company, frankly speaking, they need a lot of help, and which is not well equipped in many places. Therefore, in terms of a stage development, early stage government role is a very important thing. Mature stage sometimes is better for this private sector driver holder show. That's how I'm looking at it. Thank you.
I probably look at it from more from the university, within the university. I think one of the things, policies and all these are super important. And I think the whole innovation culture came a long way in the past 20 years. We were not talking anything in this area back then. One thing that I wish to see but haven't seen quite much is that universities in Hong Kong, big or small, research stronger or teaching stronger, they are still very disciplinary. They're still very separate. Especially a lot of the technology science, there are not a lot of integrated research facilities. For example, universities that I'm more familiar with, a lot of the laboratories are still departmental based. So there are not as much collaborations. When we visit MIT, Harvard, they are cross-university collaboration. A lot of programs across cross university, and a lot of the laboratory, the space. I don't know how they administer, but a lot of the space are for interdisciplinary work, and students from any major can go in and work together with professors from all different backgrounds. I think Stanford D School is another one of those examples. They have professors from all around different faculty. I think that is something we have it in Hong Kong, and you even hear a lot of interdisciplinary research center. But when you talk to the researchers working inside, there are not as much collaboration, and that is something I think if we can go over that barrier, we will gain a lot from that. And then the other one is I think is geographically within Hong Kong. I think COVID taught me a very good lesson is that even the very Mickey Mouse transparent mask design, because we cannot cross the border, we cannot fully utilize the manufacturing power, the prototyping power of Shenzhen. So it's, I think locally we still need that kind of prototyping power within Hong Kong. It's not super high tech, but we still need that kind of capacity in Hong Kong as well. And even within Hong Kong, the whole startup ecosystem, the whole startup landscape, let's call it, is very unevenly distributed. For example, I feel it very strongly because I live in Causeway Bay, but I work in Ningnan. Every day I have to travel that Two Moon highway. That Two Moon highway actually connect 2 points together to make the transportation more efficient. But it is actually it feels like a great wall that because once you pass the north of Tsuen Wan, you don't actually have a lot of these kind of startup spaces up there. Yeah. So majority of them are still in Hong Kong Island, and the furthest is Cheung Sha Wan. So I think a lot of these are still points that we can improve on from a city level and university level.
Yeah, so just another question is about competing demand for university these days. There traditionally university focus on education and research, but now increasingly there's a higher demand on innovation and technology transfer. But at the same time, university resources are still limited here, right? So do you think there's a significant kind of a trade-off here among various of priority for university that decisions have to be made of emphasis one by perhaps slowing or less emphasis on something else, right? So I wonder if this is one area that university administration actually need to make a significant choices among emphasis on research versus emphasis on technology innovation. If you look at the ranking, QS ranking, high time ranking, and so forth, the technology innovation is still not the indicator yet, right? So if you look at the university are pursuing those ranking and try to maintain the ranking, then this is not necessarily one of the priority for the university. So I wanted to hear from your perspective in terms of how your universities have to deal with all these competing demands, right, among the education, research, and innovation activities. Can we reverse order a bit and start from the faculty member who are here in the audience. I just wonder if you have can say a few words about how universities have to deal with this competing demand over limited resources.
Well, right. So I start. I think, well, in the end, every university will have to make the choice. And for example, I think even not to ignore all those league tables, but there are already a lot of league tables out there. And the latest one is the THE impact ranking. And that actually focus on SDG achievements. So from including the 17th goal of partnership. And that is a compulsory if you join the league table. So I think that is already something I really like to see, because it's directly related to the kind of innovation and entrepreneurship I'm trying to promote. But in terms of competing for resources, I'm one of the competitors within the system, because I have to compete with faculty for stronger research, more investment in research. At the same time, but I think that is more of a university strategy, more of, and also that has to do with UGC strategy as well.
The university we cannot escape from. We have to deal with the multiple things: teaching and learning, research, knowledge exchange. But as all the members of a university, they are not equipped well across all the borders. That means some professors are very good at research, some people very good at entrepreneurship, keep creating new companies. So it's very difficult to make one rule to recognize and then encourage all these activities. So these are naturally, resource allocation is always the issue. However, in terms of strategic directions, if a university wants to encourage knowledge transfer and then this activity is important, we believe that, then eventually it's a policy, it's the strategic means to change people's behaviors. The strategy is one thing. Another one is that is the recognitions. If the professors, they are good at some aspects, then we should be recognized. So what I did when I was in Hong Kong U is that I managed to change professors' hiring promotion criteria. This includes the knowledge transfer in it. That is another way. And then to enhance this output, then we have to invest into the more on this tech transfer function inside the university. So if you're looking at the number of technology management people in Hong Kong universities per 100 faculty members, HKUST is 1.6 per 100 faculties. Hong Kong U is 2.0, Chinese U is 2.8. And if you compare with the Caltech, has a 6.3. So that means that if we have a certain functions, it's like even though it's administration functions and the business development function will greatly improve the bottlenecks. When looking at the universities, there are many bottlenecks. If we de-bottleneck things, then we will see the result, and the quick result can be seen. Then it will motivate the university management to change more encouragement way. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor DEBACKERE.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Do you have any? Do you have some comments on this regard in terms of the kind of difficult trade-off facing the universities, with regard to how to allocate resources and how to motivate really faculty members more towards the areas of innovation and development?
Mm-hmm. Well, what we did in Leuven, and you have to take into account that we exist since '72, so we are almost 50 years old. So this allowed us to build the activity gradually. And we did this in a very entrepreneurial manner. So this means that all the activities towards the ecosystem and research exploitation run via the tech transfer office, which is called Leuven Research and Development. And this tech transfer office is fully self-supporting within the university. So this means that we charge indirect costs to all cooperations going on between academics and industry. And all the profits that are generated through this vehicle go back to the activities of the academics themselves. So there is a very entrepreneurial incentive. There is no subsidizing from the university. We have to earn our keep. And of course, the keep that we earn can be kept by us, being the tech transfer agency, while at the same time, the margin that we are able to negotiate for the research being done also goes to the research groups, and they have complete autonomy into spending that margin. And we even allow them to pay themselves salary supplements on the margins they generate. So this is a very entrepreneurial system, no subsidies from the university. As Leuven Research and Development, we are housed in university buildings, but we even pay rent to the university to be in those buildings. So it's fully self-sufficient. The academics, the research groups that work, and we have created a special structure in the university called research divisions. We have over 70 research divisions today. A research division is always a group of academics, very often interdisciplinary, that pool their efforts in terms of valorization, in terms of cooperation with industry, in terms of spin-off creation, etc. And the proceeds from that activity go back into the division, which means that the division is like a small company within the university, and the academics own that company. This, of course, requires a very strong governance within the university because this is all internal regulation. So this means that the self-sufficiency and the autonomy that we get and that we give to the academics has to be consolidated into the Articles of Association of the university. And this has been done gradually over the last 40 years. So the last fine-tuning of the Articles of Association was in 2011. And in 2011, it was confirmed that we had this strategic and financial autonomy within the university, and that we were able to have the research divisions being full entrepreneurial profit centers as they are organized today. And that's a very important incentive. And another and final word I want to say in this respect, because those divisions are purely commercially oriented towards customers, we also have fiscal optimization possibilities in terms of VAT, because VAT regulation in Europe states that if you have a commercial activity, you can deduct VAT. And that's a very important element for our research groups as well, because this means that when they invest in equipment with the proceeds of their commercial activity, VAT on this equipment can be deducted, which cannot happen at the normal university part, the subsidized part of the university. So those are important incentives within the organization.
Very much. Professor Wang? Professor
Hi,
Wang?
yeah. Yes, thank you. I think in universities in Singapore, I guess maybe elsewhere as well, teaching research are still the two primary missions for the university, and to contribute to the economic development will be like add-on to the existing missions. So it's not like to have the third mission to crowd out or overtake the prime missions. So but I do agree that there will be some demand of the resources that will be quite competitive in a way that if there's a given number of manpower and research capabilities in the university, and if there's a need to do research and do basic research together with research to contribute to the industry. So there will be some dilemma or some challenge faced by the university faculty, and especially if the faculty, the research is in the borderline between more basic and more applied that will be linked to the innovation, then the faculty members might shift their attention more from one side to another side. So I do see there will be some issues here, but for the others, if they are their research are mostly still in the basic science domain, probably they will not be affected too much by this demand or by the pull from the outside to move more towards the innovation related research. I cannot talk too much from the perspective of the university management or leadership, but according to our survey and the interviews with all the faculty members in the university in Singapore, they all describe that they mostly will still continue that research direction as they would already have and will not change suddenly only because of the funding opportunities. So only if the funding opportunities come in a direction that is not too far from their current research area, it's like is within an easy reach, then they will consider to move toward that direction. But if it's really far from their existing area, then they will not consider that. So I don't see the call from the government or from the industry partners to have more innovation related research will affect too much of the existing university research. But I do see that might affect universities' decision in terms of creating headcount in which areas and whether it will be more towards the applied or innovation related research area instead of the more basic side of areas. So that might affect the top level decision in terms of the future direction of the universities. But in terms of the existing academics, I think the influence may be not that huge from our interviews. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor MOTOHASHI.
Yeah, so in case of University of Tokyo, I seems to me that it's very similar to KU Leuven, Professor DEBACKERE mentioned that, in a sense that, so we are actually traditional national university. Of course, our history is not so long as compared to KUL, but still, you know, we used to have big research, you know, academia, but about 20 years ago, so government changed some institutions and tried to push industry, you know, university collaboration, spin out, patent. So at the very beginning, government paid seeds money, but later on, for example, like TLO, Technology Licensing Office, is not incorporated. So this is independent from university. So they are going outside. So basically they are actually doing by their own business, but still, you know, their products are inside the university. So those researchers is generating some patents, research evidence. And then, of course, when they get some license, I would say, the deal outside, then 30% goes to this company and 17% go back to the university. So we run out of basically US system. And so at the beginning, of course, there are seed money and from the government, and now, but it's totally independent and they're running very well. And of course, there are some leadership, private leadership, personal leadership at the beginning, something like Dr. Reimer at Stanford. But still, now I think it's more institutionalized already. So systematically, you know, doing very well. Investment company also, so we have, but they are also running by their, you know, a similar style of private equity, you know, type VC. So, but okay, so this is, so in this sense, we don't have so-called resource, you know, I would say, constraints or, you know, substitution between commercialization and research at the university. So most of the government research, government funding is going to the research side, education side. And when I add on one thing, so which is at the individual researcher level, of course, as I talked to that, there used to be, there are some linear model from science to the innovation. So basically, you know, professors are doing curiosity-driven research and industry, if they are interested in, they come to the university to take it on. But now there are, you know, for example, like when I talk about the AI, so you know, lots of, because AI, you need the data. And in terms of, in case of Japan, so we are not very strong at B2C, you know, internet platform or something, but we are very strong in a B2B, so-called real data. For example, automotive industry, there are some factories. There are lots of data generated, IoT applications at the hospital. So those real data are in the industry, right? So there are lots of incentive for the researcher to have high impact paper to use those data. So this science and innovation are combined now. So even at the researcher level, I think they are very willing to collaborate with industry. And this is not only for the AI, but Piero Azzore, MIT, I think he basically worked on the life science area and looking at the patent, so at the life science. And patent is kind of commercial, something like a transformation of basic science to the industry use. So industry know some patent out of how to apply those scientific finding into their business, right? So that will attract. So when the professor has a patent, and then that will attract some new industry collaborations, and that will generate new money or new research idea to the researchers, and goes into their high impact paper as well. So patent paper is kind of complementary relationship as compared to substitution. So at the researcher level, I don't think so at this moment we have to worry too much about this substitutionality in terms of research and commercialization. That's my observation. But of course, I'm just one. So of course, this is the case at the top university in Japan. So resources are concentrated at the University of Tokyo. When you go to the rural place, of course, I think there are more government subsidies you need to sustain in terms of regional development sense. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much. Maybe we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. Anyone want to ask? I know there's a lot of expert areas in the audience here. Anyone? Or anyone join from Zoom or would like to ask a question, you can also type your question in the chat box. Okay. Well, if there's no more question, I think we'll close this panel discussion session. I'd like to thank our panelists, the 5 panelists, for the excellent discussion about the different universities' practices here. I learned a lot from today's session. This is a very important topic for all of the universities around the world. Especially, I think, in the Greater Bay Area here, and there's aspiration to develop global technology innovation hub, so that the lesson that we share today will have a significant impact in such a development here. And then also, I hope that the comparative nature of today's discussion can also help us to look at different pathway, right, towards how to combine research or how to develop synergy between research and technology innovation, which is remain to be a very important topics for the years to come. So I'd like to thank all the audience here and join us in person as well as from Zoom. Thank you very much for coming to the session here. So once again, let's put our hands together to thank our 5 panelists for excellent discussion. Okay, so I will pass the mic to the MC for announcement of a lunch or other arrangement, logistic arrangement in the afternoon.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Wu. So again, thank you for all of our guests of honors and members of the audience for joining today's conference.